I think Arbor was ahead of its time, having this vision of sustainability.
People now are just like, wow, they were so far ahead of their time.
This was the first company to focus on sustainability in all of traditional action sports.
They've been in a constant state of innovation, and sustainability has always been at the core of what they do.
People were like, holy smokes, what is that? They were just blown away.
It wasn't the norm in action sports. It really was the outlier.
I remember when Arbor came onto the scene, it wasn't cool to be environmental.
Inevitably, a contraction happened in the late 90s.
And if they didn't maintain that growth, they had to react quickly or die.
To have his brand succeed when hundreds of brands were going out of business.
There was a collaborative community feel about Arbor.
One of those great leaps for the brand is when they started what they called the collective.
Interested in making sure that people understood that the boards were not just beautiful, sustainable, but that you could actually improve the performance and durability with a natural material like wood fiber and later bamboo fiber and all the other things that we've done. That's the ethos upon which we started the brand, and it certainly was different, but it's what we did 25 years ago, and it's what we're still doing today. My name is Bob Carlson, and in 1995, I founded Arbor.
The Arbor Snowboards caught my eye, had a real good flavor to it.
California's #1 weekend news, the Channel 4 News at 5:30.
Finally, switching from skiing to snowboarding can be difficult, especially if you've been on those skis for years. Well, we found a company that may make your transition a lot easier. Arbor Snowboards is an environmentally conservative company that's changing attitudes about the sport.
You know, we had been working with veneer, which is thinly sliced wood. We were like, oh, I wonder why people aren't putting wood veneer on top of a snowboard. It seems like the perfect thing to do to create a completely different look that really appeals to people who don't like the bright graphics, the crazy graphics, the cartoons. I was born in Santa Monica, and I was raised in the Santa Monica Canyon. In the 70s, the canyon was a surf community. It was the place to be. I grew up right when the Dogtown Z-Boys thing happened. Tony Alva had just invented the frontside air, and we followed everything that those guys were doing. We skated the creeks, we skated the schools, we skated everywhere. There's 3 elementary schools, they merged at junior high, and that's where I first became aware of Chris Jensen, who would later become my partner at Arbor. In 10th grade, Chris became one of my best friends. Neither Chris or I were good students. I think both of us were looking for surf more than we were looking for college. I eventually got my act together and moved to Colorado and went to the University of Colorado. was delivering pizzas that summer. I had saved enough to get a Vail pass, and I was ready for the season. And I went and got a snowboard. And I started snowboarding, and I've never been on skis since. I came out of college, took a year off, and spent a year just slumming it around Asia and the South Pacific. On the way home, I stopped through Santa Monica to see my folks and reconnected with Chris. He said, look, man, I've started this little business selling sustainable wood from Hawaii. And what they're doing is they're cutting the standing dead or fallen dead trees, and they're selling the wood to fund the restoration of this land. And he wants me to be the guy who sells the wood. And you want to be involved? You want to do this with me? And I was like, really? Chris was really good at selling things and making you think they were the greatest things ever. And I, wide-eyed jumped into it with both feet. For me, I was an environmentalist. That's what I cared about. The planet was critical to go out and do the things I love. And I always knew that whatever I did for work, the environment was going to be part of it. It was a tough business. Why wouldn't everybody want to buy this environmentally friendly wood and use it in their products? Well, it turns out they didn't. It was more expensive than the koa that they could get from non-environmentally friendly sources. I would go to these trade shows and go to these meetings, and people would be like, sustain a what? It was a really important lesson about how you get people to participate in an effort around sustainability. That experience is how I started my career. Not a lot of my friends had even started snowboarding yet. So I would either go by myself or I would go with Chris. Chris was the only other guy I knew who was snowboarding on a regular basis. Those trips from Venice to Mammoth and back were when we first started talking about starting a snowboard company. So we talked a lot about the customer. We talked a lot about making stuff that we liked. Maybe we could bring what we knew about sustainable natural materials, woods, bamboos, to a snowboard brand. Maybe we could make these crafted wood top snowboards. And we suspected that we could make a board that performed better by introducing wood fiber, maybe getting rid of some of the plastic. We ended up hooking up with this guy in Riverside and building our own factory. So we spent that year figuring out how to seal the wood, how to get the resin to work with the wood, how to make a wood top sheet without a plastic. There's a lot of wood top boards out there today, and they're all using technologies that we started in the early 90s.
Arbor was founded in 1995 to produce a unique line of snowboards unmatched in style, workmanship, and performance.
Growing up here in LA surfing, and then learning to snowboard and thinking of it as a way to surf the mountains, it was a natural connection to something that we grew up with, part of who we are.
One of the questions I would always ask everybody when they were launching a company in the snowboard industry is, how are you going to stand out? How are you going to be different? I didn't have to do that with Arbor because you could see it in the boards. They were like no other boards in the marketplace.
95, 96 trade show, SIA, Las Vegas was my first introduction.
Arbor came in unapologetic and like, no, this is who we are.
The front of the booth is a tree. You got a log off the beach. I even think we had jungle noises.
My first impression when I saw the boards, I personally didn't really get it, but I was willing to listen.
We were true outsiders. I think that allowed us to survive, but it also made the path really challenging.
There was this massive explosion in people trying to get into the industry.
I mean, there were literally hundreds. It was a mess of adrenaline and marijuana and booze-fueled nuts.
Well, if you've never been to one of the trade shows, it was pretty amazing because you had those well-established companies that were just so ensconced in the snow industry that we're here. It's like the Ritz-Carlton. Everyone wanted to come and be around them. And then you had those fringe companies that were just trying to get their foot in the door and just trying to grow.
I mean, in 1995, all you needed to start a snowboard company was a scanner, purchase order from Japan, and a buddy who could do frontside 3. He's your team.
Snowboarding at that time was 200 to 300 brands globally. So the competition was off the charts.
Most of these brands were focusing on team riders and graphics. Where Arbor came along, they had a point of differentiation. They were talking about things like sustainability, environmentalism.
My first attraction was, of course, the Koa top sheet. You know, it was something so unique and so beautiful, something that nobody had ever seen in the snowboard industry.
Well, the reason I'm riding Arbor Snowboards is I like the way they look, and they ride great, period.
It's one of the most recognizable brands because of their wood top sheets.
And when we started talking about the sustainability story, the environmental story, it was a tiebreaker. And that's what we launched with.
We accessed the raw material for the top sheets from environmentally friendly sources. In addition, a portion of our annual profits will be donated to groups working to save ancient Koa forests.
Bob's passion for sustainability started from day one. And there really hasn't been a brand that started that way.
We're not trying to be like everyone else. We're trying to do something different. We want you to think we're different. But we're trying to make sure that the beauty of the wood on the snowboard is what's front and center.
All the other snowboard industry major top sheets were skulls and crossbones and blue hair and chain wallets and baggy pants. I'm like, dude, that's not me. My direction was big mountain riding, doing my own thing and my own freedom. And when I met Arbor and Bob, you know, they kind of had the same thread.
I think Arbor's always been very approachable, I think, for so many people. They've never tried to be hyper cool. They've always just focused on the fun and kind of letting people in.
So we knew when we came to market that we had something. Not just that looked beautiful, but that rode well and would hold up. There were people who kind of, you know, said, oh, that'll never fly. But enough people and enough shops picked up on what we were doing, and I think we left that show with orders for 1,500 boards. We came home with a bunch of orders and tried to start building boards at scale in our little snowboard shop and completely failed. Of the 1,500 boards we sold, we delivered 400 of them by the skin of our teeth. But we got something out, and we got through that first year. And we were seeing some initial success. We were selling boards, we were making boards, we were learning how to make them better, we were expanding our line. We ended up evolving the model even farther, and that led to Arbor Skateboards.
It was really bred out of, you know, their desire to make more cruiser-style boards to complement their snowboards.
Which for us was a way of taking this love of freeriding and translating that to skating those lost roads on the way to Mammoth and just getting out and making turns.
I mean, I don't know if there's anything that is more ubiquitous, more popular on that boardwalk than an Arbor skateboard.
When I look back on it, I'm sure we were making a lot of mistakes.
Once the market got really saturated, that's when a lot of the brands just started to fall by the wayside very quickly. And, you know, a lot of the growth was just very unsustainable.
We were hitting people over the head with a story that was outside of core snowboarding and not doing anything to build bridges. And it didn't matter until the industry started consolidating.
At a certain point in time, it's consumer demand meets what the shops themselves can actually stock.
I think we did not bring the boards in. I tried to talk some of the guys at the shop into it. They weren't really into it.
Shops were having to make choices about what brands they were going to keep and what brands they weren't going to keep.
And they say, well, we'd rather focus on the 10 or 12 that really have, you know, an ability to drive the consumers into our shops.
All the differences that made us cut through the noise all of a sudden made us, in a lot of cases, not making the cut. I was trying to convince a snowboard industry that was getting smaller and more core that we were relevant.
So in that time in the 90s, it was all about superstars and hotshots.
It was funny, man. It was like kind of the time of fucking boy band marketing bullshit.
And it was about video parts, it was about, you know, baggy pants, Dragon Hiss sunglasses, and a Volcom hat. And Bob didn't really have any of that. And he was resting on the idea that people want something different.
When I first started riding for Arbor, the Arbor aesthetic was like pure surf guy, wood top sheet, eco something something.
You know, we used to hear, oh, Arbor, that's that hippie brand. That's funny because this is a brand that was run by snowboarders for snowboarders. Tightly held business, all about a love of snowboarding. But our sustainability message came off as soft. Back then, it was not valued.
It was an amazing time, but it was a time where sustainability wasn't necessarily cool.
Wood creates a clean, unique look that makes every board we make one of a kind.
Our presentation was off.
They hadn't really figured out like how they could integrate that super surf feel into snowboarding.
You know, we were really into surfing, and we really loved the connection between surfing and riding big mountains.
Snowboarding has really come the closest to the surfing experience, especially when you're in fresh powder. It really starts to feel like you're on a surfboard.
We had a certain amount of pride. We believed in what we were doing.
You know, you can market something, but if something doesn't get into somebody's hands.
We had done nothing to build a bridge to that endemic core of snowboarding. We were in too much debt. We had a few banks give up on us. Our sales had stopped growing and were plateauing. I had spent the last 5 or 6 years building my dream company, and it was slipping away. I got to this point where I didn't know if I could do it any longer. I was losing sleep. We had a few conversations about shutting it down. I had to flip our pyramid upside down, and I had to get out of the way and rethink everything. What we needed to do was find the things that would connect the opinion makers.
The next real piece was bringing in some key team guys.
We need team riders that share our values and want to tell our story and agree with our focus on sustainability and craftsmanship personally, but who can tell that story in a more compelling way.
They're like, yeah, we're not going to get the traditional A-listers, but who are the riders out there that we can work with that'll bleed for the brand, that have a bit more of a grassroots following, certainly have the skills.
Mike Basich, right out the gate, you know, for me, he was already an established rider when I came into snowboarding. Just a really creative approach to life and snowboarding.
At the time, this is in 99, 2000, our Arbor wasn't exactly like top of the list of being cool in the snowboard industry. It was a certain category of soul surfers that snowboarded. When I get sponsored by somebody, I always kind of stand back and like, where are the areas that we can collaborate on, something I have to offer. I think this is the second year of the graphic I did for Arbor that was non-wood. Rob came, I think, the year or two after that I started.
Being from Jackson, there was a lot of Arbors around here. There was a lot of Arbor riders like John Griber. And so I had been exposed to the boards and I knew they were well built and definitely free ride oriented. I reached out to him and was like, hey man, like, what are you guys doing? Like, I need a snowboard sponsor, would really love to like maybe be involved and help you do something that's a little more freestyle.
You know, if you know Rob and Mike, you don't get much more passionate about anything than those guys.
I think it brought more people into at least respecting the brand a little bit more, because there was pictures of two dudes ripping on them. Now you got Mikey jumping out of helicopters on his boards and Kinger going 10 feet out of the super pipe.
They also brought in a lot of aesthetic influence.
We did a pro model. That was like my big thing with all my photos. I told Bob, you know, Mike, you can still make all this. Just add a couple more. All the photos I took for, gosh, that was a good 10 years, I think there. You know, you don't have to like say no to one thing. There's all kinds of snowboarders, and he knew that.
Arbor was evolving from being kind of a pure wood top sheet company to having graphics, and was exploring that idea. And for me, snowboarding's always been very graphics driven.
I think I brought a little bit of that stepping point of like, let's bring this in. I own photos, I own the rights to them. Let's take some pieces of them. That will be our color. We'll make it beautiful to sync with the wood. And that kind of was our niche.
Those guys had come up through snowboarding where I hadn't. And really just being at the table with them changed me and changed this brand.
Just was a perfect meld for us to kind of create that next layer of a brand that was the new kind of evolution of finding a different home and a different customer.
We started growing again, and I was able to start hiring people out of snowboarding.
And they had the products, they had the efficiencies, the distribution, they had the know-how, the aesthetic. Everything was buttoned up and ready to sit there and create an expansion. And the expansion was to go into a bit more of a traditional core, high engagement demo.
Our staff and our team riders, our managers really could be at the table, and I was just there to catch all that knowledge and just make sure we stayed on course with the brand, never let us deviate from sustainability. And that really led to the concept of the Arbor Collective, a group of people that love to skate, snowboard, and surf, and who work at or share this brand and the responsibilities of keeping it fresh and growing and moving into the future. This collective model that we started building the business around really worked. Brad Farmer came over to run our marketing.
Bob really hired me to start working with them kind of specifically to try to develop the brand in a way that it had really never been developed before.
On the skate side, we started with a collaboration with Kelly Slater. We were able to talk about shaping that's inspired by surf, sustainability, sustainably sourced woods, and aspects of his life like travel and music, and build that all into a great package.
In order to create a successful path forward, we had to open that door a little bit, and we had to be a little bit more accessible.
The second team that we built was really built around Chili Miller, Scotty Vine, Sean Black, Curtis Woodman, and Nick Visconti.
One of the things that I brought to Arbor was this attitude of we're not going to let anybody tell us who we are.
Probably one of the biggest things that Bob saw was the initiative of trying to get a younger demographic and rider on the brand. The only way you're going to do it is if a younger demographic team rider is riding those boards.
You know, one of the cool things Brad did was he got us a board sponsorship with Bear Mountain. The way we really focused on winning our backyard was important to us at the time. Being every Sunday in the park, like have a couple really influential riders. We did an event there called the Face Off, and this little bratty, snot-nosed 14-year-old kid won, and we gave him a snowboard, came and hung out with us that night. His name was Eric Leone, and again, just kind of never left.
I was just trying to get our boards, our brand in everything possible. Just to kind of say, Arbor's here, we're for real, and we're coming for you.
So the team that Brad Farmer architectured, the primary change that it created was a perception change that we had already been experiencing at Arbor in the building, but maybe the rest of snowboarding didn't quite get yet.
You know, one of the other cool things that happened in that era as we were sort of evolving the more technical design side of the brand was we started getting into downhill skateboarding a bit. You know, we started skateboards as a way of bringing our love of turning and speed from snowboarding over to skateboarding. And to finally see skateboarding finding a home in the mountains was really important to Arbor. We brought on a few athletes. The one that stands out for me is James Kelly. What he was able to do on a skateboard in the mountains at speed around turns, to this day, I think few people have touched. At the same time that we started doing more with skateboarding in the mountains, we started reinforcing what we were doing, you know, in park and street skating, and we built the whiskey program.
And to grow that, we needed a team of riders. That's where we brought in riders like Cameron Riviere, you had Alec Beck, you had Olin Prennett, along with Sean Imes. People may not have been aware that Arbor made every type of skateboard, but it really was that whiskey skate that defined Arbor skateboards, not just as longboards and cruisers, but a full product line offering as well.
The whiskey team started with with local kids. And I say local kids, you gotta realize this is Venice. The street skating scene here and the Venice skate park is kicking out some of the best skaters out there today. And there's just such a solid scene here. So we were able to really build on a young skater from our neighborhood. This thing is starting to take on a life of its own, and we're moving away from this sort of Venice-centric team out into the world of skateboarding, and it's having a really powerful effect on where that program's going.
Being involved and having input and putting my 2 cents in to, see what works, see what doesn't, it's always brainstorming good things, and that's, the collaboration, between one another.
I've definitely seen how supportive Arbor is of their team riders, and I think it's amazing that they're able to provide that opportunity for people to follow their passion.
Again, it reflected the collective, the people that were coming in, the pro surfers, the pro skaters, the pro snowboarders. Our athletes really shared our values and could tell it in compelling ways. We started bringing on artists that also shared our values.
And I think one of those great evolutionary leaps for the brand is when they started working with some of these artists and designers.
Arbor's decision to start collaborating with other artists is really kind of like the next stepping stone for the brand. It really is what helped the aesthetics of the brand evolve.
We started bringing in larger amounts of graphics, mixing color and wood.
Over the years, Arbor's worked with amazing artists like Alex Gray, Aaron Draplin, Jeff Soto, Dave Kinsey, Sylvia G, Sawa, Hannah Stouffer, Craig Stesick, and that's just naming a few.
For me, Dave Kinsey was really the first successful collaboration we had with an artist of his caliber.
The artist collection for Arbor by me. That's Aaron Draplin.
When Eric starts, researching new artists to work with, which is part of the collective, every time that artwork lands on an Arbor product, it fits.
That's not to mention the in-house art department here. Extremely talented group of people. By doing skate, snow, and apparel, there are a lot of opportunities to do different styles of art. Ultimately, the way we work, we're just keeping the Arbor ethos intertwined throughout everything.
Opening and experimenting with art, and then opening and experimenting with shape philosophies sort of guided a light towards a new path for the brand altogether.
We really started kicking our design and development efforts up to another level.
I don't want to say we were first, but we were definitely in that first mix of brands who were evolving the way that snowboards looked, from being true popsicle sticks at the time or just very directional. What those platforms allow us to do is really experiment with tip and tail shaping and ramping and length.
Brad ended up leaving, and at that point, Matt Patti was running the snowboard division. Sean Black was his right-hand man. We moved into this third endemic team that is still such a huge part of the brand today.
Well, we first started talking with Mark Carter and Bryan Iguchi, and with Bryan, it just seemed like the perfect fit for Arbor.
The first years working with Arbor were exciting times. Taking 20 years of my experience and dreams, putting that into the boards that I was riding was just huge.
The sophistication and maturity that he brings to snowboarding and where snowboard product meets snow is it's a whole different level. He is a unique soul and somebody I find drives a lot of calm strength into this business.
So Iguchi was kind of the first big move, big change. When we signed him, he said, hey, look, if we're gonna do this, I need my partner with me. Like I film, I hike, I work. Everything I do with Mark Carter.
To be on the team with Mark and get to know, the diverse team that Arbor was putting together at the time was just, some of the best memories I have.
And then behind him, we were able to bring in Marie-Francois.
For the longest time, I didn't think that there could be a way to snowboard for a living and work with companies that share the same values.
Marie more or less came to us and said, hey, look, I've been looking for a change in my career that more aligns with my personal values, and I've done some evaluations, and I think Arbor's the right brand, and I want to be here, and let's figure out how to make it work.
Frank April, he is the linebacker of freestyle snowboarding.
Sean came, he said, dude, I think we need Frank. I think this is the right balance for the team.
You know, and Eric, you know, he's just so creative and thoughtful in the process and talking about his passion for snowboarding.
Eric emerged as somebody who's witty, funny, conscientious, and his style on a snowboard is very refreshingly pure and proper and a bit raw.
And then bringing in just shredder Charles Reed. As soon as he joined the team, it was just a powerhouse.
And then now with Mary, adding more women on the team.
This third team has really solidified for the industry the potential of Arbor. If you care about what you're making and you focus on what it is that drives you, you can succeed and you can build something out of nothing. We certainly did. I want to give a shout out to Chris Jensen. The guy I started Arbor with died a few years ago. This brand is a blend of the two of us. Chris was this incredibly charming, incredibly fun personality that people wanted to be around. You know, he woke up in the morning and laughed and had fun and was on an adventure all day long. He left his mark on snowboarding. He left his mark on skateboarding. He helped surface the conversation around sustainability. In the 50 years that he was here, he changed the things that he loved for the better. And I'm pretty proud that today I can look at everything we do and know that it still fits with the goals and the values that Chris and I launched this brand with. Today, when we look at the wider effort for Arbor, we refer to a forest-to-forest mentality. We start in the forest, sourcing sustainable, renewable wood products that come from well-managed forests or non-forest environments, farm-grown. Then we ensure that the sustainability can be verified either by an outside organization or by a personal connection to the landowner where we can ensure that they're managing their land properly. Then we work to really stretch these resources by veneering them, book matching. The way we treat the material maximizes the resource. We then are always focused on positive production. Everything we can do to make sure that this high quality, performance-oriented product is at every level made with the environment in mind. And then through our Returning Roots program, give back to the forest, restoring environments that will be protected forever. So for 25 years, we've been working in Hawaii as the best place to focus on offsetting carbon, as the best place to give back to the roots of surf, skate, and snow, and as the best place for us to give back to forests and the overall environment.
We're just basically trying to rebuild Hawaiian koa forests. And it's not just planting koa trees, but it's also rebuilding the entire forest. So the understory, all the supportive plants that help make that koa forest healthy.
Acting locally as people from the United States, our only tropical rainforests are in Hawaii. In a tropical environment, a tree wet rots. Instantly after it falls over, covered by other plants who sink their roots into that wet, rotting environment and pull the carbon out as a nutrient, hence resequestering it with every successive generation of plant life. So if you're planting trees in tropical forests, you're sequestering carbon for the life of the forest rather than just the life of one tree.
For a variety of reasons, there's always been that underlying, like, if we can do it and we can do it better in an eco-friendly way, then we're gonna do it. And if it costs a little bit more, that's okay, because we believe in it.
Bob Carlson, 29, president, along with Chris Jensen, 29, vice president.
I don't want to forget the past. We almost didn't make it. We were only able to survive because we figured out that we needed to build a collective of people that could take this brand forward. You know, and I am incredibly indebted to all the people that have made their way through this brand throughout the years. After all the early missteps and hard lessons, it was people that made Arbor thrive, and it's been people that got us to the 25-year mark. I can look back now and really celebrate our firsts. Honestly, it's been a very humbling process. But I'm proud of the fact that Arbor was the first traditional action sports brand to utilize and promote sustainable materials. I'm proud of the fact that Arbor was the first action sports brand to create an environmental give-back program. And I'm proud of the fact that Arbor was the first action sports brand to actually publish an environmental policy in our catalog so that we could be held to those commitments.
Yeah, I mean, his saying around here is, is progress, not perfection. When something comes out, it doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to be getting better. We've got to be climbing the ladder and taking the steps to get us, just more thoughtful about the environment and making more sustainable product.
And I think Bob's done a really insane job of really creating a company that's inclusive, but also super innovative.
Bob can be a little bit hard-headed. His hard-headedness and his focus and his determination to stay on target, he wasn't going to waver from where he knew that this brand could go. And his ability to stand firm and be sometimes aggressive in those thoughts are exactly why the brand is still here.
When he first started focusing on sustainability in snowboarding, that was something nobody else was doing at all. And he was the champion for something that really needed to happen. Because at the end of the day, we are so connected to the earth. And it's really created a massive tidal wave of eco-friendly products across the whole industry. And it was, in some ways, because he was pushing how important that was.
It's more important than ever that the outdoor industry, ski, snowboard, whatever it is, has some mindset on that.
I just think we need to collectively have more foresight. We need to collectively be on the same page. And we need to speak up, stand up for what we believe in and what we care about and what we want to protect. So it's really interesting and exciting to see more brands standing up and more people speaking up.
For me, Arbor's always been a company that inspires me because it's been so dedicated from the get-go.
Arbor means to me standing up for what is right. It means following your own destiny, not following the pack, and understanding that community, friendships, the vendor-brand relationship are all super important. And Bob stands for all of that.
The Arbor brand has stayed true to its original aesthetic and its original vision and still remains very powerful.
And that means that there's a through line to me. That means that there's a point of view. And frankly, they're not distracted by chasing trends.
And we want to do everything to make this industry just a better place to be. Not only as a family, but as a workplace and stewards of the sport.
Oh man, the future's super bright.
There's so much attention to detail and such a big team all working together, which is again why it's called the Arbor Collective.
I always just felt accepted in Arbor in a way that I hadn't with any other brand before.
Here at 25 years, I can stop and look back with a lot of confidence because of the people that are surrounding this brand.
I'm a really big believer that timing is everything in life, and there's these windows of opportunity that open. Finding, a brand that you align with the values and the approach to building snowboards and just the legacy and tradition and inspiration. It's just a profound time.
As we look to the next 25 years, our ongoing mission is really about sticking to the idea of mindfully crafted products that are built for all of the good times as we are heading out to go surf, skate, and snowboard, and about the great lines that we dream about, that we seek out in the backcountry, on the resort, on lost roads, around our house. It's those moments and memories that we create when we're out riding. And if we focus on those things, this brand will be here for another 25 years.